I'm Wayne Carey, and this is The Truth Hurts.
Well, we're back again for another episode of The Truth Hurts. I'm Ayrton and Woolley with Wayne Carey. And Duck, I'm always interested when you get back from your weekends about what's gone on. It never seems to be straightforward with you. You've always had some sort of drama, and this time it was in my home state of Tasmania, I believe. But you are here, which is good to see.
I'm very lucky to be here, to be honest with you. And that's purely because, and a lot of people out there, I've been at the airports a lot in the last 3 or 4 months and never had a worse experience to what I had yesterday coming out of Tassie. So I had a flight that I was on, which was Virgin Airlines, and I know all airlines have cancelled flights, but didn't get a notification until I was actually already at the airport. So I'm there for an hour before it bings up on the screen and says, flight cancelled. I thought, okay, no worries. There's another flight at 12:40. There's another one at 3. I was meant to be back to watch the North Melbourne-Collingwood game. I was coming back to be in a box with some corporate sponsors.
Little cashy. Yep.
So to come back. So I was really looking forward to that. And then we got put on a Qantas flight. So they said, nope, there's no more flights. You can't get on. So they shuffled everyone over. So I got onto a Qantas flight and I thought, great. So I still get back. So that flight was leaving at 12:40. We got me back to Melbourne by 2, back for the 3:20 game. Went out onto the tarmac, sat there for half an hour, came back in to the gate, and they said, technical problems. We have to fly an engineer from Melbourne down to Hobart to fix the plane, and you will be gone. You'll be on your way at 5 o'clock. So obviously the footy's done. So put a line through that. I thought, what a waste of a day. I mean, loved every bit of Tassie. Love, as I said, I love the place. It's, the produce, just so beautiful. The markets, it was just gorgeous. Had a beautiful lunch for my birthday on Saturday, which was great. So made the tough decision to not wait around at the airport for another 3 or 4 hours for the engineer to come from Melbourne. And when I got there at 5:30 a.m. this morning, there was an extra plane on the tarmac, and it was that plane. So
it didn't take off.
It did not take off. So I went back into town and had a little bit more of the local produce and got it a good early night. But I just love it. But what I did find out, your hometown, I know not your home state, sorry, not your home.
There are different towns in Tasmania.
I know, and this is the problem. This is the problem. And we're going to get some, vision and audio about what I said about Tassie, how many weeks ago now?
Probably a month ago.
I reckon it was a month ago, right before they'd signed the deal. I said the issue that I had wasn't about Tassie and what a great place it is and the fact that they've produced all these great footballs and great produce, full stop. It was the fact that they just don't get along down there. So I went around, spoke to a couple of people, a couple of different venues that I popped my head into, and they just don't like one another. They really don't want this stadium to be built in Hobart. And then there's talk of, okay, we'll mix the games up, some in Lonnie and some in Hobart, but have the bigger teams play the Tasmanian team in Hobart. And then Launceston people aren't going to put up with that. They get the Gold Coast or North Melbourne or someone like that, the smaller type teams down there, and the Collingwoods and those teams play in Hobart. That's just not going to wash. That's what I did find out about that Tasmanian people. And I'm not sure this is going to get over the line.
It's not. And it's going to be an utter embarrassment for Tasmania, which really frustrates me.
And the reason why I say that is because the people that I spoke to there, obviously the ones in Hobart, the stadium will definitely be built. Don't worry about it. We'll work our way through it. But then you speak to others that are not from there and they're adamant that it won't happen.
Yeah.
They think, and there was a protest there on the weekend as well. I think a couple of hundred people turned up to talk about the stadium, and then you have the Greenes, and they're all involved with it as well. So there's a few boxes to be ticked for this to get off the ground. I hope it does, but they have to come together. And then the other question that I also raised when we last had the discussion about this was whether they would get fully behind a Tasmanian team. And they all said within reason, for instance, if you're a young family now and you had young children, then they would obviously grow up, but it would take time. So everyone that already had a team said that Tassie would be their second team. The Tassie team would be their second team, not their first team. So it would take some time for them to really embrace the new team. And by the way, this isn't me saying it's not going to happen or it shouldn't happen. I want it to happen. I'm just saying there's a lot of question marks still to be answered for that to go ahead.
Certainly has become a massive political football and one that will affect the election down there as well. But the big thing that you did miss while you were stuck down in Tassie was the earthquake.
Oh, please.
Now, I wasn't around for the one that hit Melbourne a few years ago. This was 3.8 magnitude last night. Massive, huge. I was about a quarter to 12 last night.
I hope no one was injured.
I was sitting on the couch by myself. My partner had gone to bed. She was tucked up, and 5-month-old was also
You're
in bed.
a bit of a night owl, aren't you?
Yeah, I stay up. You go to bed early. I stay up later and get up later.
But then, you sleep in.
Yeah, you always call me and I never answer in the morning. But anyway, I was sitting there. The cat was next to me, Billy. He was minding his own business.
I can picture you. You'd be like Homer Simpson, lying up with a big block of chocolate on your stomach. The cat wrapped around your neck like a scarf.
I had a couple of cans. I was just watching a TV show, and then just this loud sort of rattling, and I could hear it on the balcony. I thought, because we get some possums and stuff out there, I thought it was like a huge animal was on the balcony. And a possum. I was like, well, I thought it was.
Hang on, what huge animals could get up on your balcony?
Like
kangaroos get about.
I don't know. It was all happening very quickly.
A killer koala was on your balcony.
I've jumped up. Billy's gone flying across the room because he's seen me jump up. Now, I do a bit of shadow batting upstairs. So I had the cricket bat. And I don't know what's going through my mind at this stage.
You do know it's winter.
I ripped my socks off because I thought then I started thinking, maybe someone's trying to break in. So I ripped my socks off in case I needed to go somewhere. I wanted a bit of grip on my feet. Grabbed the cricket bat and ran downstairs. And my missus was calm as anything. She no, I think it's just an earthquake.
Your rationale behind all of that. So some massive animal, which you said was a possum, then you reckon a kangaroo jumped up onto the balcony, kill a koala. What else could it be? It could have been a big, I don't know, a domestic cat or something, maybe.
Well, what goes through your mind at that stage? It could have been anything. Live on the edge of a park. Anyway, I was a bit rattled.
Nothing to worry about. But I did hear a little bit of feedback. But no, we didn't get it in Tassie.
Well, that's very disappointing. A big weekend of football, shocking for tipping. I think I got about 2 tips right for the entire weekend. So it was tough going. But Friday night was almost predictable in the way that Carlton, again, were a disappointment, which has been a common theme in recent weeks. It's led to more board trouble today. We wouldn't normally touch on board troubles, but there is something specific I wanted to ask you. So Craig Mathieson, who's on the Blues board, he got in a huge blue with the president, Luke Sayers, after the game. He's now stepped off the board.
That's been reported there was a huge blue?
Yeah, that's been reported, and the Blues...
Who reported that?
So the Herald Sun has reported.
Well, you're going to believe that crap?
Well, the Carlton has confirmed he has left the board.
Yes, okay, but a huge blue. I mean, I've been involved in apparently huge blues before and a big, words
when I
here,
say
there and everywhere.
A verbal altercation.
Now it's a verbal altercation.
Well,
was it?
It was a verbal blue.
Well, one, if it was written in the Herald Sun, I wouldn't believe it for starters. That's not to say there couldn't have been a discussion.
Yes.
Or even a firm discussion. But when you start saying a huge...
Well, I should have been more careful with my words. Anyway.
Well, you should. Don't believe what you read all the time.
Something's happened anyway. Just you've got with it.
No, well, you're off to a flyer. You've had a killer animal on your balcony, which none of them...
I'm still coming to terms with it, mate, all right?
No. So what I will say about when you do have troubles, and if there is trouble, and obviously he's left the board, and he's been a big part of that football club.
Well, Bruce Mathieson.
Yes, I know that, but the family.
Yes.
Okay. Big part of that footy club for a long time. So when you hear people say that it doesn't affect the players, it does affect some of the players. The elder players would have relationships with some people on the board. The younger players couldn't give a stuff. They just go about their business. All that they're focused on is getting a kick. And let's be honest, that's all they should be focusing on at the moment, is just worrying about the football. Unfortunately for that footy club, and I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, they have constantly over the last, I don't know how many years, fed on themselves. I mean, it's just a constant battle within their own 4 walls. No one agrees. They never seem to be on the same page. And all of a sudden you've got, obviously Vossi's, in his second year, and they're not playing great football. They just missed the finals last year. And then you've got stuff like this happening again. Essendon have been through it. I think they're starting to get a bit of stability now because I think Brad Scott's such a strong person and has been at a footy club before. And all of a sudden you see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for the Bombers, which is great. And that can be covered up by a couple of wins as well. Mm. We know that. So when they're never as bad as what they seem, they're never as good as what they seem. And maybe that's the case of Carlton right now. I would assume they're not back where they were, a year, 2 years, 3 years ago.
You'd hope not.
You would hope not, because this is a great footy club. It's really, really sad to see that it's taken them this long and still no finals footy. And yet we all sit back and marvel at their great list. And yes, they've still got some injuries, but it leads me into some flimsy, floppy contests. And I'm going to bring up a guy from another club involved in this, the two McKay boys. I don't think I've seen two bigger men be so at times weak in the contest. And that's a strong word to say weak in the contest, because I think both of them have shown that they can be big body players and they can take pack marks and they can be strong and they can have a physicality about them. But when they go about their business at times, there was a spoil yesterday. It was, just.
You're talking about Ben McKay here in North Melbourne.
It was just.
There's a couple of moments, wasn't it? He looked checked out. I thought, you're gone. Like he's leaving.
Well,
he's a free agent.
How can you check out when you're not even halfway through a season? You can't. Surely you can't check out. You're playing for your jumper. You're playing for self-pride, playing for your family. So surely you're not checking out. If anything, if you were thinking about leaving, you'd want to play really good footy. Put your value up if you had any thought about doing something like that.
Looking at him, did you think he's going to be elsewhere than North Melbourne?
I don't think he's going to be anywhere but North Melbourne.
You think he's
the way a few of the contests that he went into, he just has to be bigger. He has to play bigger and stronger than that.
Well, that applies to I'm interested in this because it applies to both in a way, doesn't it? Because Harry can influence a game. We know his kicking woes.
Harry's a cold. Don't worry about the kicking woes. That will come and go, and he's just got to get his head right with that, and work out what style of kick that he's going to go with. Because I still think there's a little bit of confusion, even while he's walking back. Do I kick around the corner? Do I kick a drop punt? I think that there is that still sitting in his head. But for me, it's those two in the contest that worry me at times. We're talking about two guys that are 6'8", 6'9", whatever that, and over 105 kilos, I would assume. And they don't play like that all the time. And when you're that big and that strong, and you've got opponents on you nowhere near as big, you've just got to assert your physicality. We are playing a contact sport here. You are allowed to, in a marking contest, you are allowed to attack the footy with some velocity and veracity.
How conscious of you as a leader of your football club? Because these guys, they're not captains, but they are leaders. They've been at their respective clubs for a long period of time now. How conscious of your body language were you as skipper? Because people would have fed off you and what you're looking. And when I look at these guys, I feel like that can influence those around them when their head's down or they perhaps aren't exuding that confidence that we know they can have.
Oh, body language is a massive thing, especially from the senior players. You don't have to be a leader. If you're a senior player, then you're setting the example for the younger players that are there. And North Melbourne have got a lot of younger players. Carlton have got some young players as well. So your body language is huge. So when if you miss a goal or your contest isn't quite strong enough, to make sure you let them know around you that you're a little bit disappointed in it maybe, or, you need to do better, or, use your voice. But I don't see a lot of that with those two in particular. They're both very talented footballers, and I think they can both do a lot better with what I'm talking about. So let's not talk marks, kicks and handballs and goals. Let's just talk about body language and the physicality and how they go at the footy. And that, to me, wanes, pardon the pun, far too much with those two.
So it starts there for you and everything else feeds off that. Well, we've spoken about Carlton at length. Just from that North Melbourne Collingwood game yesterday, I did feel a little bit for Steele Sidebottom. His 300th game, and he goes off injured with a knee injury early in the game. You would have played a few milestone games. Any memorable milestone games for you or not memorable ones?
Steele Sidebottom's been a superstar. 300 games right from the time he started. Left foot, right foot, highly skilled.
You've always been a big fan of
elite
Steele.
runner.
You have?
Yeah, I have. I thought he should have been All-Australian in a couple of years where he wasn't All-Australian, but he's always been ultra consistent. So great effort. Milestones, I don't remember too many. The one that stands out was my 250th, of which I was playing for Adelaide, and it was against Carlton, and it was and Brendan Favola. I kicked 4 for Adelaide, and Brendan, I had to throw that in. Brendan had kicked a goal after the siren from the boundary line, 50 metres out, to win. So against my old coach, yes, Dennis, and Fev as well. Like for Fev to do it, as you can imagine, every time I see Fev, he brings that up. So that's a milestone game that stands out purely because of the circumstances.
Talking of kicking, and I know we weren't necessarily going to go down this path. When you think of set shots, Fev, he was a great set shot, wasn't he?
Beautiful set shot. Yep, simplistic, hand down the bottom of the ball. I don't know why, the greatest goal kicker of all time, Tony Lockett, hands at the bottom of the ball. It's all about control from hand to foot. Fev worked that out, and that's why he was a great kick for goal. Nathan Buckley had his hands low. It's not like I said, I don't understand why they're taught to hold the ball more at the top or even in the middle. Your controlling hand should be low on the footy.
I watched Lloydie talk about this yesterday as well, and he was similar sort of themes in terms of, and also where the foot was heading and that sort of thing. Did you have any time in your career where you lost confidence in your kicking or anything like that? Or you had a pretty nice set shot. So I'm interested.
Within a game, I had games where I kicked poorly. There's a grand final where I kicked poorly in 98. So you can all have an off day. Yeah. The biggest thing that you've got to do when you miss a goal is you go back and you self-evaluate on the spot. So if you get a kick from a similar position, the next kick you just shouldn't miss. You should know exactly what you've done wrong. You have your checklist in your head. You go back and you know what you did wrong, and then you go back and you correct that, and generally you'll kick the next one.
Watched Richmond game with Port Adelaide yesterday. Since our last podcast, Damien Hardwick stepped aside as coach. Some big news there. The Tigers put in a good performance. They probably could have won that game if they had kicked straight. Watch Dustin Martin, still a very good player. I mean, I'm not hardly giving away state secrets there, even if he doesn't have the absolute influence that he had in the past. I did wonder, watching him and Richmond's direction, when you have the likes of Trent Kochie and Jack Riewoldt, who will probably retire at the end of the year, while they have reloaded with Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper, Richmond may want to go down a few drafts now that they are going to reset with a new coach. With Dustin, what does that mean for him? Because he still has value, and on a contender, he could be the absolute cherry on top. Is that me just muckraking there, or do you think a club might? Because I saw reports that the Gold Coast were into him last year. He still has 1 year on his Richmond contract, over $1 million. But could you see a club coming for Dustin? And how would you handle that if you were Richmond?
Well, I don't think I'm on my own here. I think Riewoldt and Kochie won't go on next year. So there's 2 guys that he's played his whole career with. You would think that, and with Hardwick gone, then it certainly does open it up for Dusty. Does he want to make, or does he have relationships with some of the younger players coming through? I assume he does. He's a ripper, Dusty. He's been an unbelievable player. I think the only way that happens is not if it's done by Richmond, but if Dusty himself says he wants to leave, then I think they'd facilitate it for him. Just like the Richmond Footy Club said, you know what, Dimma, you've been great, 3-time Premier, move on and we're happy for you. And, you've been a legend of this club for what you've done. They would do the same for Dusty. But I couldn't see Richmond going out and putting his name on the table for a first round pick. I just could not see that happening. And I don't think they'd treat their, superstar like that.
Because he's got the flags as well. I mean, he might want to finish a one club player, because I guess the guys that maybe would consider that more are the ones that are still chasing that flag.
Well, a couple of years at a different club doesn't change what he's done for the Richmond Footy Club. If he just wants to go and I guess be in a state where it's not as football mad, then you could understand why he would want to do that. And I still think he's got a couple of years left in him.
The way he's playing up forward, absolutely. There was some boxing on the weekend that you attended. Was in Tassie, was it, that you were in? At the
I did go to the boxing down in Tassie. It was fantastic.
There was some boxing too in Melbourne last week, which you, I think, I wouldn't say a keen interest in, but you certainly watched it, and involved some former AFL players in Cam Mooney and Tom Bellchambers. It was, to me as a non-boxing person, it was a bit of a farce, wasn't it?
I get asked this question a lot because I've been asked to do a lot of these boxing things over for a long period of time now. From the time I've retired, still to this day, I want to, and little do they know I'm having a shoulder replacement on the 4th of July, and have needed that for a long time. So, and plus the fact that I've just turned 52 would suggest I'd be an idiot. But I get bemused and amused that we as footballers get asked to go in and have these fights, because everyone thinks, and they hear these rumours that, Cam Mooney, he can box. I know that Cam Mooney can spar in a boxing ring against other footballers that can't fight, right? So this myth and these rumours sort of gather that you Muhammad Ali all of a sudden, and people have said the same thing about footballers against footballers are fine, but when you start mixing boxers with boxers, so don't compare. Most footballers they're not even in the same league as a guy that has boxed his whole life. It'd be like a boxer, a heavyweight boxer. He's saying, go and play centre half back on Cam Mooney. It's not going to, Cam Mooney will kick 30 goals. Now, I know he was fighting an ex-footballer, which is great. He only had 4 weeks to prepare, Big Tommy, and I got told 4 weeks ago when he did his first session, a guy that was sparring with him, said to me, they said, can't throw a punch.
Can't throw a punch.
But can take one. Has no idea. That's what I got told. Has absolutely no idea.
Why are these guys getting in the ring? Because what's that worse than them? Tell me what they'd be getting.
I don't know. I don't know. It wouldn't be a lot. But
in my head, I think you'd have to be getting over 100 grand to go and get your head bashed in.
Head bashed in. It was 3 2-minute rounds.
Well, he was. Mooney was.
Moons clearly, Moons had been training for a long time, because Moons was set up to do another boxing event which got cancelled a while ago. So he'd been training for a fair bit. But when I got told that, so they said, well, like I said, Tommy can cop one, but he can't throw one and all of this, but it'll go the distance because, and plus he's a big boy. And then you watch it, and what you realise watching that is like, it's a bit embarrassing in terms of, what their capabilities as a boxer. I mean, technically they were both putrid, and it was a farcical fight. And in the end, poor Cam, who I love, who's a Wagga boy, Premiership player but all that he's lost is a bit of pride, bit of reputation, and Big Tommy looks like George Foreman. He looks like he's come out of it looking like and people are saying, oh, we'll get him another fight. If I was Tommy, bit of advice to Tommy, don't take any other fights. And also, if you are a footballer thinking about it, make sure it is 100% against another footballer. Don't ever do it against a boxer. Even Gallen found, Paul Gallen, who's done a pretty good job of his boxing career after footy. But when he got put in against a boxer, he was made to look second rate as well. And that box was a lot younger as well. The only one I think of that's made the transition is Mundine. I mean, Mundine was a gun footballer, rugby player. Shouldn't say footballer, rugby league player.
Yep.
And I think he was obviously a high class, very good boxer as well. But I can't think of too many others. Sonny Bill Williams, obviously gun rugby player, but he has fought mainly other footballers as well, not necessarily boxers.
Like Gallen.
Yes.
You mentioned then, I just picked up on the fact you talk about yourself being a Premiership teammate of Cam Mooney's, and a lot of people forget that. So he played in 99 with you, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he only got about 15 minutes on the ground or something that day.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't get a stat.
No.
Do you
Still got a prep, but he contributed. People forget. I'm a believer that if you play on grand final, not only if you play on that day, if you've played games during that year, then you've contributed to that Premiership. The 22 or 23 that play on the day don't, they're not the only ones that have contributed to that flag. It's the whole squad that has played during the year that have contributed to it. So yes, he had duck eggs, but he is a Premiership
sorry,
North Melbourne
Cam.
player.
He did go on to win a few more and contribute.
He did. And by the way, he's a ripper, Cam. But I get the feeling he would be highly embarrassed about taking and doing what he did.
Well, I did notice it was not discussed, as far as I could tell, on his TV show on Fox Footy last night.
Oh, well, I wouldn't discuss it either.
Speaking of television, I see David Kochie has left your old network, Channel 7, 21 years of...
Geez, we're really delving into some topics today.
He's left after 21 years on The Breakfast Show. You are obviously you've spent a bit of time on TV as a player, then as a commentator. You've been on SAS Australia more recently. I'm sure you've had lots of offers for different wild and wonderful programs. Is there any that stick out in your mind that you have done or you haven't done?
What pricked my ears about what Kochie said, and I really like Kochie, and I think he's been very good for the Port Adelaide Football Club. He's bringing that club, a lot of stability at different times when there has been a little bit of, backroom fighting. He has been stable, but he's also commented a lot. And one of the comments he made, and I listened to his speech on the show, and he said, well, now I can spend more time with my football club. I'm not sure Ken Hinkley and others at Port Adelaide want him to be spending more time involved with the footy club. But he loves his football team, but I'm not sure he should be getting too much, not
a bit like Jeff Cannon at Hawthorn, perhaps, where you just say, Jeff, just maybe.
Well, sometimes, and as we discussed before, a lot of board members and presidents, some are real football people, some are not. Some don't know one side of a footy from the other. So some should just purely be there from a business point of view and have nothing to do with the football department.
Want to get into some viewer or listener questions, which we've been hoping to promote over the last few weeks. We really want to get these up. For any questions you have for Wayne, you can post them on YouTube, on our various channels on Spotify and Apple. I've just got a couple of comments first before I get into the questions, Wayne. This is from David Keale. This was a couple of days ago. I must admit, I always thought Carey was an arrogant wanker in his footy days. You're probably right, David, but it's great to see a different side of him in these yarns. Very human, flawed like all of us, but very relatable. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Keale. And you know what? You're probably right. I was an arrogant wanker.
Dimitri, Hantis. Wayne had incredible vision last week when he expressed concern about Clarkson. I love listening to the podcast as there is no BS with Wayne. He says things as they are and is enjoyable and entertaining at the same time. P.S. would love to hear Wayne talk about skills today versus yesteryear. You've got rose-coloured glasses when you talk about your era. You say everything was better in the 90s. So I'm guessing that's what you're going to say.
Well, their tackling skills are better now. Their defensive skills are better now. By the way, these are not things why you go to the footy, to watch people tackle and be defensive, but they are better. So the structures are better. Defensively, they are better. I don't think they're as skilled. I think there are a lot of players that play in the modern game that can't kick on their left foot or handball on their left hand. And I think there were more in our era that were able to do that. But once again, the game is very different. But I don't think that they're more highly skilled. I think some of the quick hands that they do, like in traffic, I think that's gone to a whole new level. Then in our era, we didn't do that as much, but we didn't handle the footy as much. We wanted to move it forward, which some teams are doing now as well, not wanting to stuff around with it, but actually take the game on. But so to answer your question, in some elements, yes. In others, no. Certainly not goal kicking.
Aaron Wood said, Duck, you were talking about Dacos and the soft commentary surrounding his gut punch and saying Greene would have been dragged over the coals. All of that's correct. Now, there is no doubt the MRO is influenced by all of this. This is from what Aaron's saying. Should the AFL ban all official media from giving commentary or opinions on actions or incidents that are likely to come under review?
No, because they have to, and they're told to by their employer. They're told that you've got to make a comment on that, and you're under pressure to make a comment on that and make strong comments on it. I just think it's up to the commentators to be fair on everyone.
The AFL did at one stage, actually, I think I'm right in saying in the early 90s, have a ban on showing tribunal incidents until the tribunal case was heard. But of course, no social media then, much easier to, I remember on the news, they'd play up until the moment.
It's no different to the commentators, I think, like when And on the flip side, when Toby Greene does something really well, you hear the commentators, like when he does something bad, they go overboard with that as well. But when he does something well, boy, they pump him up like he's the best. And by the way, he's an unbelievable player, was very good on the weekend again. But another player will do that with a lesser name and they just go, oh, and he takes a mark and handballs it all. Oh, what a great goal. Whereas with Toby, it's pumped up. And as it should, and we do celebrate our very good players, but it's on the flip side. They get those bigger comments when they do something well, and they also get it on the other side. And I guess that's what being a high-profile player brings.
Dal Jit says, great show, Wayne. Keep it up. Can we have some discussion on Geelong, please? And that's particularly, I think, important after the weekend again with a loss that we perhaps were not expecting.
Yeah, the Cats for me, obviously been a few changes. They've brought in a little bit of youth, and they've had a couple of injuries as well.
Yeah, their midfield particularly.
Correct, which has affected them. I'm not prepared to put a line through the Cats. I know they're out of the 8 right now, but not prepared to give up on them just yet. They've got too much quality to say that they're out of the race, and they could be a side, and probably top 4's out of the question, but they could be a side that could do some real damage in the bottom half of the 8.
We've got 2 to go that I'll ask you this week. This is from Foss. Duck, I'd love to hear you talk about the favourite grounds you played on, the nuances with each of the AFL grounds, their change rooms. You played some sensational games at Waverley, just the quirky things regarding 90s footy, even the interstate travel and the different buffets.
What I do know about the buffets is they're a real trap, especially for porky ones like you. They're a real trap because what you do is you overeat. You even those of us who could afford to eat a little bit more the night before, or if you're there 2 days before. I mean, because all this food come out. Now, normally if you're at home, you might get your takeaway pasta or you'll have a steak. You're not getting up having 4 lots of sweets. Well, at these buffets, you've got everything there. Pago used to sit there with a pad and just write down how many times guys got up. I remember Mick Martin got up for his 2nd or 3rd bowl of sweets, and Dennis would say, hey, son, do you normally have 3 bowls of ice cream on the night before? So he knew what. So they can be a trap. Always. A little
bit more tightly managed these days than perhaps in your day too.
Yeah. I remember Simo, when he first took over at West Coast, he said that he had to keep an eye on McGovern. He said the buffets got hold of him a little bit in his early days. It was quite funny because Simo, obviously under Pagan, he would have been watching. So it's funny how little traits pass on to the younger coaches. And by the way, good luck to Simo, going through a bit of a tough time at the moment. In terms of grounds, I love Waverley, obviously the MCG. In actual fact, you end up enjoying, and I think we are the only game in the world, are we? Professional game where our ground sizes change. Like, you look at all the other professional sports and you don't have different courts, different basket heights. You don't have, your baseball fields are exactly the same dimensions. Everything, all the dimensions are the same, whereas we can go to grounds and it changes every time. So it is different, but you learn when you're younger, you probably, as a forward, you like more space, and then you learn how to play on grounds with less space and make your own space. So their little quirkiness. One of the big things though, and the worst thing about some of those suburban grounds, and I'm talking about Princess Park, I'm talking about Collingwood, Victoria Park, and that is
change rooms.
Their change rooms were shocking. You had no room whatsoever to even warm up in. And the other thing were the showers. You came in and you just had shocking showers. Like Princess Park were terrible, Vic Park terrible. You might only have 1 or 2. At our training facility at Arden Street, we only had 1 good shower. And it was in the corner. So after training, basically everyone's lining up for that one shower. Now, all the young blokes knew not to even line up there because it was
a seniority thing.
Yeah. So you would walk down. Pago never went down there though. He always shuffled up the other end.
How quickly did you get your way up the list for showers?
Oh, I pushed my way up there fairly quickly. I was always and staying there for 20 minutes.
I could not see you lining up for anything.
So the showers were a big thing. Waverley showers were the best. So they had like a massive dinner plate, and the water pressure was huge. So I after a Waverley game, I'd always be the last to leave. I would stand under that. We haven't got a shortage on water at the minute, have we?
No, not
I'll have someone say it. Oh, that'd be right. You're a water wasterer.
Yeah.
Probably getting the paper for it. But so yes, so they were the little things at the grounds that you always knew when you were going there. That geez, at least they got good showers.
Final question. This is from Vultures. Wayne, give us your top 5 AFL players, past or present, to get on the drink with. Share some stories. Love the podcast.
Look, I think that's a podcast in itself. We're going to have to do a separate podcast for that. And maybe a lot of people out there, and I know you're one of them, and I'd see it every week. I was just in Tassie, as
this is going to be a positive
I see it every week that no one knows how. And I'm not talking about out of the tap. I'm talking about out of the bottle or a can. No one knows how to pour a beer properly. So we're going to do a little clip on how to do it properly. And I've been taught by an expert.
I believe you.
So we're going to do that. So we'll add that into that.
Just before we go into I know we'll go into a top 5 when we do that podcast. Is there any name that pops into your head just straight away when you think of that? We'll delve into it deeper, but what was the first name that came to your head when I said that?
Darren Crocker was pretty good. Now, he won't like me saying that because he's the coach of the women's team. And it's funny how players that are still involved in the game, they go, don't mention me back when I was well, mate, you pound for pound, he was very good. Anthony Rock's entertaining. Martin Pike, very entertaining. There's a long list, and there's a few from other clubs as well. But all of these guys now are family men and they're matured and everything else. So let me be on record of saying that so I don't cop phone calls about mentioning their names.
Well, Wayne, thanks for another great show. Before we do go, there was one TV program that you decided to omit before. I wanted to know all about this, but I think you've deliberately left this out because you're a little bit embarrassed. I'm going to play a clip for you from a show in the early 90s that you appeared on.
I saw your photo on the front page of a newspaper. What would the headline be? That's to quit contestant number 2.
Probably found guilty on all charges.
Now, that was played in a show before you got in trouble, funnily enough. That was played on, what show was that and when was that?
Perfect Match. Why I went on that. I didn't answer your question before deliberately because I've been asked to do all the different shows, Dancing with the Stars and all those different things. I've done the SAS, as you know, and I did the full Monty, which was, for a great cause. But I did that, and I think I was only 18 when I went on that show, and that answer, I think it's online saying that I was predicting my future. So I don't know now. Why would I come up with an answer like that? I'm not sure, but I will say this: I got the date. So I got no matches, but she picked me because apparently, this is what I got told afterwards. Her mum was in the crowd saying, "Pick number 2." She picked number 2. So
did you go on a date after?
We did, yeah, not after. We a couple of weeks. You have a chaperone and picked up in a limousine and went to a nice French restaurant. I'd never eaten French food before. I didn't know French food was basically just a steak and French fries. Well, if you go to the good French restaurants around town, that they do that beautifully.
Well,
so it's not that thrilling, but yeah, that was one of those ones you look back on and you can't erase.
Absolutely. Well, for anyone who wants to send in their questions, keep doing that. You can subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you again next week.